Let's walk over to this topographic map of Israel. This is fascinating. Okay, here is Israel. It's the size roughly of New Jersey, I guess you would say. If Israel gave up the land that the world, including the Obama administration, wants it to give up, it would be the size of, oh, I don't know, Rhode Island or Delaware, I guess. Walk us through, Mark.
Okay. Now, how did the West Bank get its name? Well, it's the west bank of the Jordan River. But this is the great thing about this map. When people look at this map, including the New York Times editorial board, I must add. I walk into the New York Times editorial board, and the editor says, oh, this is the West Bank. You're never going to prove to me that that's strategic, that area there. And I say to him, you know, you're right, that is the West Bank. But that's not the West Bank we know and love, or know and love to fight about. The West Bank is actually this mountain range here.
Yes.
Okay? And these are the mountains of Samaria. These are the mountains of Judea.
The biblical heartland.
The biblical heartland of Israel. Yeah. So what they're really talking about is not giving up this little segment over here. They're talking about this whole segment over here. And Jerusalem is right at the top of the crest. You see there's a crest line here.
And Ben Gurion Airport here. We're going to go over this much more after the break. Hang on after the break. Much more with Mark Langfan. A fascinating overview of just what Israel is up against and what a Palestinian state would really mean. Stay tuned. By the way, with these maps, folks, you can find all of them at marklangfan.com. Check it out, see with your own two eyes. But right now, Mark, you were walking us through the so-called West Bank, which is really the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, and what Israel would be giving up if it gave up this land.
Exactly. And so what I say, really, is this is not the West Bank of a river. It's really misnamed. It should be the West Heights, in that these are the mountains. And the key here is I put this blue patch here. And just to give everybody an idea, between the Green Line and the Mediterranean Sea is about 10 miles. So between here and here is 10 miles, and between here, north and south, is about 40 miles. In this rectangle is 70% of Israel's Jewish population and 80% of her industrial base.
70% of Israel's population, 80% of its industrial base. In this small area right here, which appears to me, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, would be in rocket range if Israel gave up these mountainous peaks.
Absolutely. And in fact, I have a plexiglass piece that I use to show the range of the rockets that are now being fired from Gaza. Now, some of the rockets go a little further, some of the rockets go a little shorter, but this is the approximate range of the rockets. If you were to create a quote-unquote demilitarized Palestinian state in the West Bank, it sounds clean, it sounds antiseptic, but this is not North Korea and South Korea where there's nothing in between.
Right.
Here you have, they always remind us, there's 1.5 million Palestinians, 2 million Palestinians. So they're going to be moving commerce in and out of here and smuggling, just the same way they're smuggling into the Gaza Strip and firing these rockets. They can smuggle the same types of things into this area and fire them into
Ben Gurion Airport is there. Every time I go to Israel, Mark, every time you go, we're landing right here within Katyusha range, and those Katyusha rockets can be tipped with chemical weapons.
Absolutely.
And on that note, let's take it to this map, Mark. Again, 70% of the Jewish population, 80% of Israel's industrial base.
So now, why is this so critical? Well, it's critical because Hamas and Fatah have fired about 15,000 rockets from the Gaza Strip. And thank goodness it hasn't killed very many people. And the reason it hasn't killed very many people is because this is mostly empty farmland. So it's basically like firing a Katyusha rocket from North Dakota in North Dakota. No negative against North Dakota, but it's relatively empty. The difference is, if you were to get one rocket into the West Bank and fire it from the West Bank mountains into this heavily, densely populated area, it would be the same as firing a rocket from Brooklyn into Manhattan.
Wow.
Okay.
9 miles here.
9 miles.
9 miles from the West Bank, the so-called West Bank, Judea, Samaria, to the Mediterranean coast. 9 miles. That's nothing. Like you said, from Brooklyn to Manhattan. We saw what happened when Israel gave up land in the Gaza Strip. We had thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets hitting Sderot, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Beersheba even, as far as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem just last year, very close. What would happen? What do you think would happen? And Mark has laid it out for us eloquently and convincingly. What would happen if the West Bank, the so-called West Bank, was forged as a Palestinian state? This would be a new terror base. You would have an Iranian terror base, not only in Lebanon, to Israel's north, Gaza to its south, but in the breadbasket, the heartland of Israel. Mark, thank you so much for breaking this down for I understand it even much better, and I've been to Israel, I've been on the ground, but to see it broken down in these maps to me was invaluable. We can't thank you enough, and we'll see you again next week. We're going to have some more maps here with Mark Langfam, breaking down the Iranian threat. Walk us through this map. Here's tiny Israel, folks, the size of New Jersey. Mark, walk us through and show us what Israel is up against.
Well, this map is really not just to show what Israel is up against, but more the point relating Israel to Greece and to NATO and Western civilization. Because oftentimes Israel is couched as a little Satan, whereas America is a big Satan. Sure. What this really shows is that Israel is the tip of the West spear. Yeah. And without Israel, you would have a Muslim tsunami vectoring right into Greece and NATO.
Right. How many Muslims here?
You've got 370 million Muslims, and in this little corner up here, you've got 11 million Greeks. Right. Now, the only non-Muslim country between 11 million Greeks and 370 million Muslims is the 6 million Jews of Israel.
So Israel, what you're saying, Mark, Israel is essentially the first line of defense for Western civilization.
The first and, in effect, the last line of defense, because between Israel and Greece, there's nothing except Cyprus.
Right, which is 1 million Christians, by the way. And Mark, let's just lay it on the table here. If, God forbid, the Iranians and the jihadists succeeded in their plans to wipe Israel off the map, they wouldn't just stop at Israel, pack up their bags, and go home, right? They'd keep going.
That would be the appetizer. And then you'd be for the main course.
Right into Europe. And on to the land of the great Satan, America.
That's right.
Mark, let's walk.